Just remember, you are not allowed to leave a negative comment on this video unless you have watched to the very end. Hey there, folks. This is me kind of going off on just something I'm hearing that makes me realize, you know what? Maybe I'll talk about that. So, what spawned this whole thing that I'm about to talk about was Agatha All Along. Because I watched the first few episodes, fell behind, caught up later, and when I caught up, I think it was on episode 6, I put out a tweet saying that I was not super liking the show. Actually, I was a bit more specific about it. I did not like Agatha, and what were appearing to be some character deaths were really bothering me. And I had more than one person give me some equivalent of saying, you can't judge it until you've seen the end. Now, some people wrapped that in a notion of, well, you don't know that these characters are dead. They might come back, and some people just said it flat out. And it reminded me of a lot of the frustration I had when I was criticizing Doctor Who Flux when that started, because while I have come to recognize there's at least 1.5 good episodes in that, it starts real rough. And I had so many people telling me right off the bat, stop saying it's bad. You have to see the whole thing first. No, I don't. No, I don't. Like this, in a way, this is almost kind of a spiritual successor to a video I did years ago, addressing the idea that you can't really judge a movie by its trailer. What I pointed out in that one was, yeah, you can. That's why the trailer exists. It exists to be judged. Can you state definitively what the final product is based off the trailer? Well, no, but you absolutely can judge a movie by its trailer. It exists for that purpose. They want you to watch it and they hope that you judge that the movie looks good. But if you don't, you have every right to say that. And similarly with this, yeah, I can say that something is not working and bad before I've seen the end of it. And I kind of want to dig into that a little bit more. Now, I'm actually, here's the funny thing. Even though Agatha All Along is what spawned this whole thing, and the time that this video is going to come out will be after the show's wrapped up, I'm actually recording it before the show's over. So I'm not going to be dwelling on that specific example very much. I had intended to do a whole thing. I was like, ooh, you know what? I'll do this before and have this out right before the finale. And then I'll do the actual assessment of what I think and whether or not the ending made it worth right after. And I can even make predictions about what my opinion might be, but it's not worth doing now because I found out that they're actually dropping the last 2 episodes on the same day, so it ended a week earlier than I thought it did. So that whole idea went out the window. But I'm still shooting this before then because that's going to end up being a quick turnaround video and I need to keep ahead of things. But yeah, let's address the idea that you are not supposed to judge something until you've seen the end of it. And of course, by something I mean a piece of entertainment. Not a big fan of this notion. Now, to be fair, it can be somewhat situational. The first thing I'll grant is that if there's a medium where I'm going to say, okay, maybe it's going to be film, because your average film runs 2 hours. And unless it is fully throwing you off or it's triggering you or you are just having a deeply miserable time, in which case I said, yeah, you still have a right to bail. But broadly speaking, if you're just I don't think this is very good and you don't see it through to the end, yeah, I think you need to caveat your opinion at the very, very least. And I've never done that I can think of with a movie. I'll see a movie through to the end. But when you start talking about something that is a longer time commitment, be it a book, be it a season of TV, be it multiple seasons of television, then yeah, I don't think that that's a very fair thing to try and put out there. No, you can't judge it until you get to the end. Now, I suppose to be fair, You don't really get that when you talk about episodic TV, but people will say that when you talk about serialized TV. But couple things about this. The first is, you notice that only goes one way? Generally, when it is said by people who are defending whatever the media is, whether it's Agatha All Along or something else. And they're defending it because they like it. So you've already judged it. And you've judged it to be good. You don't see anybody getting on your case and going, don't say that it's good. You don't know that. You can't say that it's good until you've seen the end. People don't do that. People might be on the pessimistic side and going, well, we'll see if it stays good or whatever, but people don't get on other folks' case about it in the other direction. Only when you're like me and are like, I don't think this is working. Then people are like, no, you can't say that until it's done. And look, I also understand that it can be irritating listening to other people say something is bad if you're enjoying it, especially if they haven't seen it all the way through, which is actually why I didn't do episode by episode reviews for Agatha All Along. I knew from the trailer that I'm like, I'm probably going to be irritated by this thing. And I knew that if I did episode by episode reviews, I was just going to be a negative Nancy dragging everybody down. I wasn't going to have fun doing it. Nobody was going to enjoy watching it. I did ultimately decide to do an overall thought on the thing once it was done, but I was not going to sit down week to week to talk about it, not have fun doing so, and make something that just would get people annoyed and asking me, why are you even watching it when you're not really enjoying it that much? I was curious for how it was going to wrap up, but I didn't really think it was going to end up good. Maybe it did, but I suppose that's the other thing I'll acknowledge. There are some times where an ending can elevate a thing, whether it is movies or television. When it comes to movies, a couple of examples I can think of. Well, I mean, there's plenty of great endings. Let's get that out of the way. I'm not necessarily talking about that, but I'm talking about something that was like, this is fine. You know, it's not amazing, but this is fine, but got elevated to a higher level thanks to the ending. I think something like La La Land, Cinema Paradiso, if I'm being honest, or within the realm of television, Loki Season 2. I adore the ending to Loki Season 2. It is wonderful and I love it. The season leading up to it is okay. First season was stronger. It just was. But that ending to Season 2 is fantastic. But you'll notice in those examples, I'm saying, here's something that was like, it's okay. But then the ending elevated it. As opposed to me going, yeah, no, I don't really enjoy this. Because that's at least been my experience, that when an ending elevates a thing, it elevates a thing that you could go either way on. If you've already tipped over into not liking it, the odds of the ending saving it, I couldn't think of any examples where that's happened for me, at least. But, like, to be fair, endings can recontextualize things. Endings can make you look at something in a different way. But in an odd way, I do think there is a little bit of an issue with that. It kind of biases analysis towards repeat viewings. Here's what I mean by that. Especially if we are talking about a TV show, something across multiple episodes, especially if it's something like Agatha All Along that actually has a week between episodes. You are just sitting there digesting and being stuck with whatever you were left feeling by that last episode for a week. That's all you've got. Will the next one be better? Maybe. But for right now, that's all you've got. And it's pulling you along through that. And the experience of taking an episode and that's all you've got for a while gets lost when we start to only talk about or only give credit to analysis of the entire thing. This is actually why I tend to do feedback the way that I do. Don't ask me to like read your stuff, but like I have done that for friends of mine. I have a friend who has a novel that is coming out next year, and I beta read that novel. I've read some of my friend Jesse Gender's creative works and given my feedback on that. And one of the things I tend to do is I will leave notes and thoughts, and I will write them down as I am going through it. And if I write down something that gets answered later on, I don't get rid of that earlier criticism, and here's why. I think it is valuable if someone's seeking feedback for the creator to know that I got to this point and was like, what is going on with this character? And while I may get to something a little bit later that makes me go, oh, okay, I think it's still valuable for the creator to know, because maybe I'm asking that question way sooner than I'm supposed to. Maybe it's taking longer for me to go, okay, now I get it, than they are intending. Or maybe I wasn't supposed to be confused by it at all, and I was supposed to get it right off and wasn't. There is the experience that you have while watching it for the first time that we just don't really talk about much anymore. In the age of deep analysis and repeat watchings for video essays and binge models, we tend to talk about the thing as experiencing it after you've taken in the whole thing. Like, to take something like character deaths, especially if it turns out that they are still alive at the end, they didn't die, or they're brought back to life or whatever. That is going to bias, I think, a lot of conversations around it in favor of the view you have on a second viewing, which is, I know this character is okay. And so you think about it in those terms going forward. But that kind of erases the experience that you have of seeing and believing that character to be dead and how that impacted you, especially if it impacted you negatively. Not in a, oh, I like this character, but in a, I think this is a bad moment. I think this is poor writing. I don't think this works. But that conversation gets lost when we bias towards this thing of, oh, but at the end, they come back. I kind of had this conversation with people about Deadpool 2 and Vanessa, because I hate what they did with Vanessa in that. I actually don't like what they did with Vanessa in Deadpool and Wolverine either, but granted, by then there was precedent, so at least I wasn't caught off guard by it. But I hated what they did. They fridged her at the start of that movie. If you're not familiar with that term, it's from comics, a term called women in refrigerators. It is the brutalizing, killing, etc. of a character for the explicit and singular purpose of motivating another character. That's the only reason it happens. Happens to women and love interests a lot. That infuriated me. And so many people I knew are like, yeah, but she comes back at the end. I don't care, because the experience I had watching it doesn't get erased by that. And the experience I had watching it was some bullshit, and it ruined a huge chunk of my viewing experience starting off on that foot. Fixing it, quote unquote, at the end doesn't eliminate my displeasure and dissatisfaction that I experienced up to that point. And that's what I mean by saying, like, talking about, oh, you can only talk about it when you get to the end, biases this full knowledge and ignores the experience that you have taking it in pieces, taking it in chapters, taking it in episodes. Because if one of those episodes doesn't work, but then it kind of comes together at the end, that doesn't suddenly mean that that episode worked. It just means that you found a reason to forgive it later on. But that episode could still be seen as being a problem and mishandling things. And that's kind of the problem when you only talk the big picture. And like, I'm not saying there's no value in the big picture. Of course there is. But your moment-to-moment experience, especially on a piece of entertainment that takes longer to take in overall, and especially one where you have long gaps between entries, and at this point, with so much stuff in the binge model, I would say a week is a long time by today's metrics. When you have that amount of time between them, your moment-to-moment, episode-to-episode experience matters. And if you're not enjoying it, that is not irrelevant. That is not invalid just because you haven't gotten to the end yet. I'm reminded of something that Linkara has said about why character deaths in comic books really bother him, even though statistically, most of the time they come back. But as he has pointed out,
sometimes they don't come back.
You don't actually know for a fact whether or not they're going to come back. So if a character is killed in a way that seems wasteful, in a way that seems disrespectful, in a way that is not in any way satisfying, that robs you of catharsis, the idea that they might come back later, even if it is likely, doesn't negate the fact that that's not a good thing. And that's how I feel about the issues that I'll have with something like Agatha All Along, where episode by episode, I'm not having fun. And that's not to say there were no good episodes at the time of recording. Again, there's 2 more episodes to go, but the 7th episode, I think it was, whatever one that focused on Patti LuPone's character, great episode, best one of the show. Also didn't really feature Agatha very much, and she's my main source of pain, but like I'm assuming I got into all that in my actual video review of that show. But that experience per episode matters. And if you are able to hold off your opinion and just keep your thoughts in stasis until you get to the end, you know what? That's valid too. That's fine. If that's how you are able or choose to, or just by default take in a piece of entertainment like that, fine. That's lovely. I process a piece that I've been provided as a completed piece, especially in a piece of television. If you give me an episode, you have packaged this and you said, here, have this. I am going to judge whether or not that works. I will judge it overall when I get to the end on whether it works in the whole as well. But on its own, you served it to me by itself. I'm going to judge it by itself. I think that that is fair. Now, if something's being released as a binge, I'm not going to say that suddenly I'm on board with the idea of you can't judge it till you see the end, but that makes it closer to what I said about a movie. Like, this isn't intended just kind of be taken in all at once. Depending on how long the show is, that may not be reasonable to take it in all at once and do it as a binge, but especially when there's breaks between episodes. This is what you gave me. This is the course of the meal you have given me. I'm going to judge it. If the appetizer was great, the dessert was great, but what I got in the middle, if the main course was garbage, I have a right to say that. Each course that you give me, each sampling, each taste, that is a dish you have given me that I am within my rights to judge. Because much like a trailer, it exists to be taken in and for me to judge it. And to judge whether or not I want to continue to have more. That's why it is being presented the way that it is. And if that's not the way it should be presented, don't present it that way. Like, understand the medium you work with. Play to the strengths of what you do. Because if your argument is going to be, well, it's meant to be watched all together, but you're releasing it weekly, well, somebody on your end screwed up. That's not my fault. So I just kind of wanted to get my thoughts out there on that because it was, as I said, it's a sentiment I've heard before with things like Doctor Who Flux, and it bugged me then, and it got stuck in my head, and I'm like, you know what? Let me purge myself of these thoughts. So there you go. What are your thoughts on taking in and making a judgment on a piece of media before you have seen the whole thing? Do you think I'm completely off base? Do you understand where I'm coming from? Whatever your thoughts might be, just be polite with them. Drop them down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills and enables me to do this as my living. Even if you can't help me out that way, like, share, and subscribe. They'll help me out. Don't worry too much about it, though. What I really want you to remember, because hopefully you stayed to the end, and if you did, then especially, you're beautiful, you are valid, you are loved. You are the council, and I'm just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned. And now I'd like to thank my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Goddess Elida, Welsh Wrestling Geeks, Oliver B., Melissa Pedersen, Movie Turtle, Ulrich Bogdan, Loki Eris, Melinda Walters, Auntie Kate 808, Becky Sparks, Fernambulax the Poodle, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperl, Dave Hall, Quite Bearish, Rosalind Bennett, Adam RDL Taylor, Pal Barabajoggle, Mira G, and Sir Didymus is my favorite. They're all calmer this time because they're eating papaya. Whatever works.